Um, okay, is my screen visible?
Yes, yes, Prabhu.
Okay. So we'll start with the Mangalataran.
Yeah.
Jnana Jnana Salakaya Chakshurumiltam Yena Tasmai Sri Guru Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manu Vishnu Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Upagadamayam Datati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Sri Guru Sri Yudapatakalam Sri Guru Vaishnava Sri Rupam Sagrajadam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakanitam Sya He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय Hare Krishna. Today we are supposed to have the Saturday program from the Namahatta Center, but due to some reasons it was cancelled. So we'll be having this rather short class for today. Actually, this is a continuation. This is like the third part because in some of our earlier classes, Patitaran Prabhu had covered this, the first two chapters from this book, On the Way to Krishna. And during the first Namad program on the 4th of March, Patitaran Prabhu was covering the initial portion of this, the first part of this chapter. And then last week, I had covered a few more pages. And today we'll try to finish this chapter. So this chapter is from the book titled On the Way to Krishna. So in this chapter, it's titled Seeing Krishna Everywhere and Always. So in the opening paragraph, it's stated, in our practical life, Krishna instructs us how to invoke Krishna consciousness. This is just a recap of the earlier portions before we go to today's part, the last part. So Krishna consciousness is not about totally neglecting material life, because we have to be engaged in our material affairs. However, it's just the consciousness which has to be transformed from being always having these material designations and material consciousness, from being engaged in fruitive activity. With Krishna consciousness, we can transform our material activities into spiritual activities by following Krishna's instructions from the Gita. Like one of the most famous verses from Bhagavad Gita, which is always quoted by many people, is the verse from chapter 2, 2.47. Karmanyavadhikaraste ma phalesu kadachana ma karma phalaheturbhur mate sangosto karmani. Where Krishna says that you have the right to perform your actions, but you're not entitled to the fruits of actions. However, due to our material contamination, we are always obsessed with the fruitive results, and that's why it's called material contamination. We are always obsessed with matter, but by transforming our consciousness into Krishna consciousness, we can convert our material affairs into spiritual actions by dedicating whatever we do to Krishna. And that's what Krishna himself says in chapter 9. In 9.27, he says, Yat karosi yat jasnasi yat josi dadasyat yat tapasasi kaunteya tat kurusam adarpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever austerities you perform, do it as an offering to me. So what we gain by doing that, whenever we offer all our actions and even the fruits of our actions to Krishna, we can get rid of our material desires, as stated here. The Sanskrit word kama is used to indicate lust, desire, or sense satisfaction or sense gratification. Actually, it is not just, it does not refer to just lust. Any type of material desire that we have is can be equated to this word. So by transforming our consciousness and by offering all our works and the fruits of our activities to Krishna, we can get rid of material desires, and that's the only thing that is required to escape from this material world. Like even in yesterday's session, we saw some verses from Bhagavatam where Lord Brahma also says that the spiritual world is only meant for those who have transcended beyond all material desires. So actually during the first part, it was covered up to this portion in the first session on March 4th. Then in last week's session, I covered just a few more pages up to this portion, Gita 7.8. So here actually Prabhupada is talking about how we can actually practice Krishna consciousness in every step of our life. Actually, Krishna makes it very easy for us. This is from Gita chapter 7, verse 8. Raso amapsu kaunteya prabhasmi sasisuryo pranavas sarva vedeshu shabdake paurusham rishu. O son of Kunti, Arjuna, I am the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon, the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras. I am the sound in ether and ability in man. So this is a verse from chapter 7. So to which Prabhupada explains, in this verse, Sri Krishna is describing how we can become fully Krishna conscious in all stages of life. All living entities must drink water. The taste of water is so nice that when we are thirsty, nothing but water seems to do. No manufacturer can create the pure taste of water. We can thus remember Krishna or God when we drink water. No one can avoid drinking water every day of his life. So God consciousness is there. How can we forget? Especially now, since we are approaching this summer season, or it has probably even started, we can even feel just how tasty plain water is. During the summer season or whenever we are very thirsty, we can actually feel the taste of plain water. So Krishna says that even the taste of that plain water is him. So when we are fully absorbed in pure Krishna consciousness, we'll be able to see Krishna in everything. And even in chapter 10, titled Opulence of the Absolute, Krishna describes his opulences. Like he says that among archers, I'm Rama. Among the animals, I'm the lion. Among the Pandavas, I'm Arjuna. So he establishes his opulences by referring to the best of everything. So similarly, even when we look at a lot of so-called wonders in our daily life, like let's say some technological advancements, for example. So let's say all these so-called AI applications or any other similar stuff. What we must understand is that those so-called AI stuff are artificial, meaning they were made by men. Still, just because they were made by men, it doesn't mean that men are supreme, because who made us? Who made the human brain? And these so-called technological developments like AI are also just a portion of what we have achieved. I mean, it's just a portion of what the so-called advancement which man have achieved. However, who created the human brain? So that itself shows how great the Supreme Lord is. And we also know that we are not the only living species of living entities in this world. There are 84 lakh species, which we also saw in yesterday's session. So even those 84 lakh species were created by the Supreme Lord. But even those species refer to the material body which were created for conditioned souls to enjoy sense gratification. Then those are only the 84 lakh material bodies for the living entities. Apart from that, the Supreme Lord even created the material nature. And there are many other such wonders in when we talk about the material nature itself. However, we also know that the material world is only 1/4 of the entire kingdom of God. So there is the spiritual world, which consists of 3/4 of his entire prowess. So his entire kingdom. So even if there are so many wonders in this material world itself, so we can even imagine how great the spiritual world would be. So we should strive to go back to the spiritual world, which would be much more wonderful than this material world. And that's what we can achieve by practicing pure Krishna consciousness. So actually in last week's session, we stopped at this point. So in today's session, we'll finish the remainder. Similarly, when there is some illumination, that is also Krishna. The original effulgence in the spiritual sky, the Brahma Jyoti, emanates from the body of Krishna. This material sky is covered. The very nature of the material universe is darkness, which we experience at night. It is being artificially illuminated by the sun, by the reflected light of the moon, and by electricity. Where is this illumination coming from? The sun is being illuminated by the Brahma Jyoti, or the bright effulgence of the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, there is no need for sun, moon, or electricity, because there everything is illuminated by the Brahma Jyoti. On this earth, however, we can remember Krishna whenever we see some illumination from the sun. So it is stated here that the material sky is covered, meaning that the material world which we live in is devoid of the Brahma Jyoti effulgence, which emanates from the Supreme Lord. In other schools of thought, which promote this impersonal notion of the Supreme Lord, they say that the Brahma Jyoti is the actual form of the Lord. They think that the impersonal Brahma Jyoti is the Supreme Lord, and actually, he takes a personal human form when he descends to this world. However, that's not true, because even in the Gita, chapter 14, the last verse of chapter 14, that is the 27th verse, 14.27, Krishna himself says, Brahmano hi pratishtha aham. He says that he is the source of the Brahma Jyoti. And in the spiritual world, the Brahma Jyoti effulgence, which emanates from the body of Krishna, it illuminates the entire spiritual world, meaning that the Brahma Jyoti effulgence, which emanates from his body, not only illuminates the entire Goloka Vrindavan planet, it also illuminates all the other Vaikuntha planets which are there in the spiritual world. So we know that the spiritual world is 3 times larger than the material world, because material world is only 1/4, the spiritual world is 3/4. So the Brahma Jyoti effulgence of Krishna is more than enough to cover 3/4 of the entire creation. However, we being trapped in this 1/4 of the entire creation, we are devoid of that Brahma Jyoti effulgence. And that's why it's said that the material sky is covered, and the very nature of the material universe is darkness. And therefore, artificial illumination is required for this material world by the sun and moon, which also derive their energy from the Brahmajyoti effulgence. The spiritual world does not require any illumination because it's stated here the spiritual world does not require sun, moon, or electricity because there everything is illuminated by the Brahmajyoti. The Brahmajyoti effulgence from the body of Krishna, who resides in Goloka Vrindavan, not only illuminates the entire planet of Goloka, it also illuminates the entire spiritual world, which consists of numerous other Vaikuntha planets. So, actually, there's another verse in Gita in chapter 15.6. Na tad bhashate suryo, na shashanko, na pavaka, yad gadva, na niyatante, tad dhamma paramam mama. Which means that in the spiritual world, in Krishna's abode, there's no need for sun, moon, or electricity. So that is what is explained by Prabhupada here. So we being trapped in this material world, we are actually in darkness because we are devoid of the Brahmajyoti effulgence. However, even some of the so-called enlightened people who claim to be impersonalists, they tend to think that the Brahmajyoti is the ultimate destination, which is not true because the source for the Brahmajyoti effulgence is Krishna's transcendental body. So we must be clear about our goals, that we must aim for that source of the Brahmajyoti and not to simply merge in the Brahmajyoti. When we chant the Vedic mantras, which begin with Om, we can also remember Krishna. Om, like Hare Krishna, is also an address to God, and Om is also Krishna. Shabda means sound, and whenever we hear any sound, we should know that it is a vibration of the original sound, the pure spiritual sound Om or Hare Krishna. Whatever sound we hear in the material world is but a reflection of that original spiritual sound Om. In this way, when we hear sound, when we drink water, when we see some illumination, we can remember God. If we can do this, then when will we not remember God? This is the process of Krishna consciousness. In this way, we can remember Krishna 24 hours a day. And in this way, Krishna is with us. Of course, Krishna is always with us. But as soon as we remember this, his presence is factual and is felt. We also saw in last week's Friday session on Mahatattva, where we saw that when the creation starts, first it begins with the gross element, which is the sky, followed by the subtle element, which is sound. So sound is the subtle element which begins with the material creation. And in order for, though we are trapped in this material world, we still have to get things done using the material elements. Though sound in this material world appears to be a material element, however, when we use it in our chanting to chant the holy name, then it becomes spiritual. Similarly, we can use all the material assets in this material world in a Krishna conscious way to achieve the supreme abode. There are 9 different processes for associating with God, and the first method of association is Shravanam, hearing. By reading the Bhagavad Gita, we hear the speeches of Sri Krishna, which means that we are actually associating with Krishna or God. We should always remember that when we speak of Krishna, we refer to God. In as much as we associate with God, and as soon as we go on hearing the words of Krishna and his names, the contamination of material nature is reduced. In understanding that Krishna is sound, illumination, water, and so many other things, it becomes impossible to avoid Krishna. If we can remember Krishna in this way, our association with him is permanent. So I'm sure we have heard of this famous verse from Bhagavatam, 7th canto, 7.5.23. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Padasevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasham Sakyam Atmani Vedanam. The Namahatta Bhakti, of which the first type of bhakti which is mentioned is Shravanam, hearing, followed by Kirtanam. And Actually, if we observe, Shravanam is always the easiest method of practicing bhakti, because uh, it is as easy as we don't even have to go to any temple or even any Namahatta center. Today, thanks to the power of Krishna, though people tend to call this as technological development, we have to remember who created the human brain. And therefore, thanks to Krishna, we have all these applications using which we can not just attend session like ours, we can even go to YouTube and listen to various lectures from many other great acharyas. So Shravanam is the actually I want to quote something which was said by one of my favorite preachers, Amarendra Prabhu. He also said that Shravanam is the lazy and intelligent way of worshipping Krishna, because we just have to sit and listen. However, beyond that, we can also advance further by practicing Kirtanam, because from the disciplic succession, or even from various other personalities in Bhagavatam itself, we can observe that those who practice Shravanam, they also advanced much further in such a way that they were able to perform Kirtanam. For example, uh, Sukadev Goswami heard the Bhagavatam from his father, Vyasadev, and then he had this discourse with Parishit Maharaj. And in the same assembly, uh, the disciple of Sukadev Goswami, um, Suta Goswami, was also there in the same assembly, and he was sitting there and he was listening to the discourse of Bhagavatam between Sukadev Goswami and Parishit Maharaj. And then he went to perform Kirtanam to impart the knowledge of Bhagavatam to the sages of Naimisaranya. So these two are the most, the rather two simplest ways to worship Krishna. And of course, there are much more challenging ways. Like if we talk about Archanam, like deity worship, we need a lot of paraphernalia for that. However, if we simply perform Shravanam and Kirtanam, like even the practice of chanting itself, when we do chanting, we are actually doing both. We are chanting Kirtanam, and at the same time, I mean, whether in Japa or Kirtan, uh, we are also hearing the sound. So these two are the simplest ways out of the 9 methods. And of course, the most difficult one will be Atma Nivedanam, which was only done by very exalted devotees. Though we can try to go to that stage, maybe. Association with Krishna is like association with sunshine. Where there is sunshine, there is no contamination. As long as one is out in the ultraviolet rays of the sun, he will not be diseased. In Western medicine, sunshine is recommended for all kinds of diseases, and according to the Vedas, a diseased man should worship the sun for cure. Similarly, if we associate with Krishna in Krishna consciousness, our maladies are cured. By chanting Hare Krishna, we can associate with Krishna, and we can see the water as Krishna, the sun and the moon as Krishna, and we can hear Krishna in sound and taste him in water. Unfortunately, in our present condition, we have forgotten Krishna. But now we have to revive our spiritual life by remembering him. So this again quite straightforward. The more we chant and the more we hear, we are sure to remember Krishna always in whatever we do. We don't really have to strive too hard. The more time we spend in chanting, and even after chanting, we can, and nowadays it's very easy, especially when we talk about Shravanam. There are so many lecture sessions, and we can also watch Prabhupada's recorded videos, even his Vani, his audio recordings. So if we simply engage in these two methods of worship, there's no way that we cannot achieve pure Krishna consciousness. The process of Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting, was approved by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when Lord Chaitanya was speaking with Ramananda Raya, a friend of the Lord and a great devotee. The Lord questioned him about the methods of spiritual realization. Ramananda recommended Varnashram Dharma, Sannyasa, the renunciation of work, and so many other methods. But Lord Chaitanya said, no, all of these are not so good. Each time Ramananda Raya suggested something, Lord Chaitanya rejected it, requesting a better method for spiritual development. Finally, Ramananda Raya quoted a Vedic aphorism which recommended that one give up all unnecessary endeavor in mental speculation for understanding God, because by speculation it is not possible to arrive at the ultimate truth. Scientists, for instance, may speculate about distant stars and planets, but they can never come to any conclusions without experience. One may go on speculating throughout his life and never reach any conclusions. So now when we talk about this so-called scientific knowledge, we are always being told that our Shastras, our so-called religious scriptures, we are always being told that our Vedic knowledge and our religious scriptures are mere religious scriptures. However, the word Shastra itself means science in pure Sanskrit. The word Shastra means science, not just in Sanskrit, but also in other languages like in Malayalam. In Malayalam, the vocab of Malayalam is has the most resemblance with Sanskrit. And so even in Malayalam, the word for science is Shastra. So Shastra actually means science. Our Vedic knowledge is all about science. They were never religious knowledge, religious scriptures. According to a famous British economist, India was the most prosperous country for over 1,000 years at a certain point in the world history. And then after the invasions, the economy was destroyed gradually, and it came to the current state. So at the time when our Shastras were regarded as science, Bharat was the most prosperous country in the world. And today, when we ourselves have reduced our Shastras to mere religious scriptures, we know where we are today. So all the answers are there in the Shastras. However, even the original Vedic knowledge and the original scriptures have been destroyed. Quite a significant portion have been destroyed. And thanks to the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we still have access to these scriptures like Gita and Bhagavatam. However, the advent of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also is much related to the nature of human beings in Kali Yuga, because he wanted to establish this Kali Yuga Dharma, which is Harinama Sankirtan, because he knew that human beings in Kali Yuga will not be, they won't be having enough intelligence to study scriptures. Of course, in our community, people are always inclined to study scriptures like Gita from WhatsApp forwards. No matter how much we try hard to distribute the Bhagavad Gita, a lot of people still want to read from WhatsApp forwards, though we have such beautiful packaging of with hardcover and all that. However, from the life of Mahaprabhu, we can see that since the nature of human beings in this yuga is such that it's not easy for us to understand the scriptures. He came to promote the Kali Yuga Dharma, Harinama Sankirtan, and even in one of the his conversations with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, a great Vedic scholar, they had a discussion regarding the Vedanta Sutra, and during that conversation also, when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya asked him why do you merely want to practice Harinam Sankirtan? Why are you not interested in studying the Vedanta Sutras and all that? To which Mahaprabhu replied that this is what Mahaprabhu said. My guru prevented me. He has forbid me from trying to study the scriptures because I'm not intelligent enough to do so. So from that statement, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was being sarcastic in such a way where he was actually referring to the sorry state of human beings in Kali Yuga. He was actually implying that human beings in Kali Yugas, the Kali Jivas, are not intelligent enough to understand the scriptures, and therefore he prescribed this easy method of Harinam Sankirtan for us to simply chant and dance. That is the Yuga Dharma for this Yuga. However, there's another, from another perspective, we can also look at it this way, because the original state of Kali Jivas is such that we are actually not intelligent enough to understand the scriptures. However, those so-called scientists who claim to be extremely intelligent, they also always question the existence of God and many other things mentioned in the scriptures, merely based on their judgment. And we also know that human beings are always fallible due to the four weaknesses, like having imperfect senses, always being in illusion, having the propensity to cheat, and also being illusion, having a propensity to cheat, having imperfect senses, and these weaknesses actually prevent us from understanding the absolute truth. And therefore, even from this so-called science also, we can understand just how much speculation have been going on in the name of science. Like we were told that atom is the smallest indivisible unit of particles, and then some other people came and said that no, there are other divisions, and things are going on like that. However, if you look at our scriptures, for example, Gita, the knowledge of Gita, it has been the same for the past 5,000 years, from the time when it was spoken to Arjuna. However, even Krishna himself had said that in Gita chapter 4, he has also said that the knowledge of Gita was first spoken by him to the sun god much earlier, like millions of years ago. So throughout all these years, the knowledge in the scriptures, the absolute truth is always eternal. However, due to our material contamination, we are always going after relative truths. Like even in the example of science, the example of atoms and subatomic particles, that so-called knowledge keeps changing. But that's not the case with spiritual knowledge, and that's why only spiritual knowledge can help us to realize the absolute truth. It's especially useless to speculate about God. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam recommends that all sorts of speculation should be given up. It is recommended instead that one becomes submissive, realizing that not only is he an insignificant creature, but that this earth is only one small point in the great universe. New York City may seem very large, but when one realizes that the earth is such a small spot, and that on the earth, the United States is just another small spot, and that in the United States, New York City is but a small spot, and that in New York, the individual is only one out of millions, then one can understand that he is not so very important after all. Realizing our insignificance in the face of the universe and God, we should not be artificially puffed up, but should be submissive. We should be very careful not to fall prey to the frog philosophy. Once there was a frog in a well, and upon being informed of the existence of the Atlantic Ocean by a friend, he asked the friend, "Oh, what is this Atlantic Ocean?" "It's a vast body of water," his friend replied. "How vast? Is it double the size of this well?" "Oh, no, much, much larger," his friend replied. "How much larger?" "10 times the size." In this way, the frog went on calculating. But what is the possibility of his ever understanding the depths and far reaches of the great ocean? Our faculties, experience, and powers of speculation are always limited. We can only give rise to such frog philosophy. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam recommends that we give up the method of speculation as a waste of time in trying to understand the Supreme. So it is clearly stated here from the explanation regarding this frog philosophy. Whenever we talk about scriptures, a lot of so-called rationalists or atheists, they totally dismiss whatever is has been mentioned in the scriptures. However, they always have this tendency to go on speculating about God, and they have their own judgments regarding the criteria for God. They try to set the benchmark criteria for God. They say that if God exists, he should do this, he should do this. So that is the frog philosophy. We are such minute particles in the entire kingdom of God. Like as mentioned earlier, we are trapped in this material world, and even in this material world, we have seen regarding the Purusha avatars. When we talk about Mahavishnu, the water bubbles which emanate from the body of the bodily pores of Mahavishnu, those bubbles, each of those bubbles, they transform into one universe. And we know that there are innumerable universes in the entire material world. And even within each universe, there is one Garbhodakasai Vishnu and there's one Brahma for each universe. We are belonging only to this universe. So in the entire material world itself, there are innumerable universes. So we can understand just how minute our position is. And even the material world itself is only 1/4 of the kingdom of God. So that even reduces our position even further. So who are we to pass judgments about how God should look like or how God should behave? Who are we to set benchmarks for him? That's why it has always been emphasized by our acharyas that we should not fall prey to all this frog philosophy kind of speculation, and focus on the knowledge which is there in the scriptures. Even in Gita chapter 16, 16.24, Krishna himself says, Yes, Astra Vidim Ustajya, Vartate Kamakarata, Nasa Siddhim Avapnoti, Nasugam Na Paramgatim. Krishna says that those who don't follow the scriptures but do things according to their whims and fancies, they can never achieve perfection. They can never attain peace. So that has been the instruction of Krishna in the Gita. And that is also what our acharyas say, that we should accept the knowledge in the scriptures as it is. After giving up speculation, what should we do? The Bhagavatam recommends that we become submissive and hear the message of God submissively. This message may be found also in the Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures, in the Bible or Quran, in any bona fide scripture, or it may be heard from a realized soul. The main point is that one should not speculate, but simply hear about God. What will be the result of such hearing, regardless of what one is, whether he be a poor or rich man, an American, European, or Indian, a Brahmana, Shudra, or whatever? If one but hears the transcendental word of God, the Lord, who can never be conquered by any power or force, will be conquered by love. Arjuna was a friend of Krishna's, but Krishna, although the supreme godhead, became Arjuna's chariot driver, a menial servant. Arjuna loved Krishna, and Krishna reciprocated his love in this way. Similarly, when Krishna was a child, he playfully took the shoes of his father, Nanda Maharaj, and put them on his head. People may try very hard to become one with God, but actually we can surpass that. We can become the father of God. Of course, God is the father of all creatures, and he has no father himself, but he accepts his devotee, his lover, as a father. Krishna agrees to be conquered by his devotee out of love. All one has to do is hear the message of the Lord very carefully. So even from the Bhagavatam, there are so many pastimes which involve Krishna, the great exalted devotees of Krishna, and of course, there's always these characters of the demoniac characters. For example, if we take the example of Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad, uh, so we can see the interactions between Prahlad and Krishna, and also between Hiranyakashipu and Krishna. Hiranyakashipu wanted to grab the position of God, and he foolishly tried to get the boon from Brahma. However, we know what happened to him. But when it comes to devotees, those demons who try to grab the position of Krishna, they were always destroyed in the end. However, to devotees, Krishna himself was always willing to be a servant to his devotees. So it is actually, if we look at the end result in both cases, in the case of Hiranyakashipu, he also wanted to make Krishna his servant, like how he made the demigods. But Krishna is always willing to be a servant to his devotees out of love, not out of envy or enmity. So that is the only way we can attain love of Godhead, by avoiding all sorts of speculation, and we just have to hear what is there in the scriptures from realized souls, from acharyas who belong to a bona fide parampara, and simply by following their instructions, we can attain love of God. However, we should also be careful not to make our objective we should not have this mindset of trying to make Krishna our servant. He will be captured by true love of the devotee. So that kind of true love can only come from the mindset where we must have this mindset to always be his servant. Only by such pure mindset, only then he will be willing to reciprocate our love for him. In the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna gives additional ways in which he can be perceived in every step of life. Punyagandha Prityam Cha, Tejas Chasmi Vivavasav, Jivanam Sarvo Bhuteshu, Tapas Chasmi Tapasvishu. I am the original fragrance of the earth, and I am the heat in fire. I am the life of all that lives, and I am the penance of all ascetics. Gita 7.9. The words Punyagandha refer to fragrances. Only Krishna can create flavors and fragrances. We may synthetically create some sense of fragrances, but these are not as good as the originals that occur in nature. When we smell a good natural fragrance, we can think, oh, here's God, here's Krishna. Or when we see some natural beauty, we can think, oh, here's Krishna. Or when we see something uncommon, powerful, or wonderful, we can think, here's Krishna. Or when we see any form of life, whether it be in a tree, in a plant, or an animal or human being, we should understand that this life is part and parcel of Krishna. For as soon as the spiritual spark, which is part and parcel of Krishna, is taken away from the body disintegrates. So the most basic understanding that we must get from practicing spirituality is that we are not this material body, we are spirit souls. And we are spirit souls who are part and parcel of Krishna. That is what Krishna himself says in Gita 15.7. Mama Ivanso Jivaloke, Jivabhuta Sanatana, Manasashtani Prakrishtani Karshati. Krishna says that all the living entities are parts and parcels of himself. So when he says living entities, he's clearly talking about the spirit souls. We are spirit souls who are part and parcel of Krishna. However, it is due to our material desire that we wanted to enjoy sense gratification that Krishna gave us this material body. So as long as we wish to enjoy sense gratification, we will be trapped in not just in this material body. We can even be caught in any of the 84 lakh types of material bodies according to our consciousness. And therefore, only Krishna consciousness will liberate us from this encagement of this temporary material body. And also, it is stated here that all sorts of fragrances and flavors come from nature. And we know that nature itself is just a byproduct of Krishna's inferior material energy. Many of these so-called rationalists and atheists say that there is no God, everything comes from nature. But there's more than enough proof from the scriptures which prove that nature itself is nothing but a mere byproduct of Krishna's inferior material energy. And a lot of people, even these so-called scientists who keep boasting about their achievements, they say that they have created this and that. However, all the raw materials or ingredients required for such so-called scientific creations even come from this material world. We still use all the raw materials which were provided by Krishna, and then simply by seeing the end product, we feel so proud of ourselves, and then even to such an extent that we try to deny the existence of the Supreme Lord, who gave us all the raw materials in the first place for us to come up with such creations. And even there's always this debate between the so-called scientists who say that life comes from matter. There's a very nice book titled Life Comes from Life from BBT. Actually, that was the first book which I read, and that's how I actually got acquainted to Krishna consciousness in the year 2000. So even in that book, actually that book is a compilation of many morning walk conversations between Prabhupada and his disciples, and also some other personalities from various walks of life, in which Prabhupada tries to actually, he debates with many other scientists to demolish their arguments and to prove how life comes from life and not from matter. Because as soon as the spirit leaves the material body, there's the dead matter cannot do anything. So, but still, the so-called scientists say that life can be created from dead matter, for which there's no proof yet. Bijamam saro bhutanam vidhi partha sanatanam buddhir buddhimatam asmi tejas tejasvinam aham. 7.10. O son of Pritha, know that I am the original seed of all existences, the intelligence of the intelligent, and the prowess of all powerful men. Here again, it's explicitly stated that Krishna is the life of all that lives. Thus, at every step, we can see God. People may ask, can you show me God? Yes, of course. God can be seen in so many ways. But if one closes his eyes and says, I shall not see God, then how can he be shown? So those who say that there is no God, they are just, they are actually pretending to sleep. They are not sleeping, they are pretending to sleep. So it's impossible to wake them up. In the above verse, the word bijam means seed, and that seed is proclaimed to be eternal, sanatanam. One may see a huge tree, but what is the origin of this tree? It is the seed, and that seed is eternal. The seed of existence is within every living entity. The body itself may go through so many changes. It may develop within the mother's womb, come out as a small baby, and grow through childhood and adulthood. But the seed of that existence that is within is permanent. Therefore, it is sanatanam. Imperceivably, we are changing our bodies at every moment, at every second. But the bijam, the seed, the spiritual spark does not change. Krishna proclaims himself to be this eternal seed within all existences. He is also the intelligence of an intelligent person. Without being favored by Krishna, one cannot become extraordinarily intelligent. Everyone is trying to be more intelligent than others, but without the favor of Krishna, this is not possible. Therefore, whenever we encounter someone with extraordinary intelligence, we should think that intelligence is Krishna. Similarly, the influence of one who is very influential is also Krishna. So, as mentioned by Krishna in chapter 10 of Gita on opulence of the absolute, Krishna clearly establishes how the best of the best in everything is a spark of his powers. It is also stated here that the spiritual spark is the eternal seed of existence. So, as mentioned earlier in Gita 15.7, Krishna says, Mamayanso Jivaloke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. Krishna says that all the living entities are his eternal fragmental parts. So, we, being conditioned souls, we are trapped in this material body, which is temporary and it is changing every moment. So, it is stated here that our material body goes through so many changes from the mother's womb till the day we die. It is also stated in Gita 2.13. Deinosmin yada de kamaram yavanam jara tata deyantra prakti dhiras tatra muhyati. Like how the body changes from childhood to boyhood to youth, and how it the embodied soul takes another body. The material body keeps changing, not just after death, even during our lifetime itself, our material body keeps changing. However, the spiritual spark, the soul, our soul is eternal. Balam balavatam cham kamaraga virujitam dharma viruddo bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshava. I am the strength of the strong, devoid of passion and desire. I am sex life which is not contrary to religious principles. O Lord of the Bharatas, Arjuna. The elephant and the gorilla are very strong animals, and we should understand that they get their strength from Krishna. The human being cannot acquire such strength by his own endeavor, but if Krishna so favors, a man can get strength to exceed the elephant thousands of times. The great warrior Bhima, who fought in the battle of Kurukshetra, was said to have strength 10,000 times that of an elephant. Similarly, desire or lust karma that is not against religious principles should also be seen as Krishna. What is this lust? Lust generally means sex life, but here karma refers to sex life, which is not against religious principles. That is to say, sex for the begetting of good children. If one can get good Krishna conscious children, he can have sex thousands of times, but if he can only beget children who are raised in the consciousness of cats and dogs, his sex life is to be considered irreligious. In religious and civilized societies, marriage is intended as an indication that a couple is to engage in sex for begetting good children. Therefore, married sex life is considered religious, and unmarried sex life is considered irreligious. Actually, there's no difference between the sannyasi and the householder, provided that the householder's sexual activities are based on religious principles. So we saw that regarding intelligence and strength, it all comes from due to Krishna's mercy, because no one can be intelligent without the blessings of Krishna. Even in Gita 15.15, Krishna says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivista matta smriti jnanam apohanam cha vedesya sarvai amem vedya vedanta krit vede videva chaham. So in that verse, the first two lines, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivista matta smriti jnanam apohanam cha. I am seated in every living entity's heart, and from me come remembrance and forgetfulness. So it is Krishna who gives remembrance and also forgetfulness. So everything is due to his mercy. Whether someone is intelligent or someone has great physical strength, none of it would be possible without Krishna's blessings. Therefore, that's why even those who have great intelligence, physical strength, or even material opulence, they should not be puffed up, because it is all due to Krishna's blessings. ye chaiva satvika bhava rajasas tamasas chaye matta eveti tan vidhi na tu aham teshu temai. Know that all states of being, be they of goodness, passion, or ignorance, are manifested by my energy. I'm in one sense everything, but I'm independent. I'm not under the modes of material nature, for they, on the contrary, are within me. Gita 7.12. uh, so, we have also seen regarding this in many of our previous sessions, like how the material modes of nature are merely byproducts of the entire material creation. So the material modes of nature are the three puppeteers who control the conditioned souls. However, we being materially contaminated conditioned souls, we tend to think that we are exploiting material nature. And that's what uh, Krishna wanted to do to accommodate us. Since we wanted to enjoy sense gratification due to our material desires, Krishna created this material world, like how parents send their kids to the playground, for example. So we tend to think that we are actually exploiting and enjoying in this material world. However, we are merely being puppets at the hands of the three puppeteers, the material modes of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Uh, However, Krishna being the transcendental supreme person, even the modes of material nature originate from him, from as a byproduct of his material energy, and therefore he's not affected by those modes. However, materially contaminated conditioned souls who tend to identify themselves as great scientists, rationalists, or atheists, they always have this inclination to question or judge the supreme person who is not contaminated one bit by these material modes of nature. One may question Krishna in this way. You say you are sound, water, illumination, fragrance, the seed of all strength and karma and desire. Does that mean that you exist simply in the mode of goodness? In the material world, there are the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Thus far, Krishna has described himself as that which is good, for instance, sex in marriage according to religious principles. But what about other modes? Does Krishna not exist in them? In answer, Krishna replies that whatever is seen in the material world is due to an interaction of the three modes of material nature. Whatever can be observed is a combination of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And in all cases, these three states are produced by me. Because they are produced by Krishna, their position is in him, but he is not in them. For Krishna himself is transcendental to the three modes. So the key word here is transcendental to the three modes. Thus, in another sense, bad and evil things which are produced out of ignorance are also Krishna when they are applied by Krishna. How is this? For example, an electrical engineer is producing electrical energy. In our homes, we are experiencing this electrical energy as coldness in the refrigerator or heat in the electric stove. But at the power plant, electrical energy is neither cold nor hot. The manifestations of this energy may be different for the living entities, but for Krishna, they are not different. Therefore, Krishna sometimes acts on what appears to be the principles of passion or ignorance, but for Krishna, there's nothing but Krishna, just as for the electrical engineer. Electrical energy is simply electricity and nothing else. He makes no distinction that this is cold electricity or that is hot electricity. So Krishna being the transcendent supreme person, he is neither good or bad, because things like good or bad, profit loss, these dualities are only restricted to this material world. In the spiritual world, there are no dualities, and the supreme person, who is the topmost in the spiritual world, he is transcendent, meaning that he is above everything else. The conditioned souls are always dominated by the three modes of material nature, and especially for human beings, we are predominantly under the influence of the mode of passion. That's why we always tend to engage in fruitive activity, and we are always desiring for material benefits, material wealth. However, in order to go back to Godhead, in order to attain the spiritual world, we have to transcend all three modes. In one of our sessions titled Goodness is Not Good Enough, in that session, we saw that even the mode of goodness is not good enough, because even the mode of goodness is still a material mode of nature. And therefore, we have to transcend even the mode of goodness to attain the spiritual world. And Krishna himself, he is transcendental to those modes, because these modes are merely byproducts of his material energy. And from his viewpoint, they are nothing but just a byproduct of his energy. However, for us, we tend to experience the modes in three different variants, and we are being under the influence of those three modes. But the transcendental supreme person, he is above all those three modes. Actually, the three modes of material nature are merely the byproducts of the material world. But we know that Krishna is way beyond the material world. He's there at the topmost level in the spiritual world. So how can he be affected by the material modes of nature? However, those who are contaminated by the modes of material nature still want to pass judgments regarding Krishna. Everything is being generated by Krishna. Indeed, the Vedanta Sutra confirms Atato Brahma Jignasa, Janmadi Asyayata. Everything is flowing from the supreme absolute truth. What the living entity is considering to be bad or good is only so for the living entity, for he is conditioned. But because Krishna is not conditioned, for him there's no question of bad or good. Because we are conditioned, we are suffering from dualities. But for him, everything is perfect. So in Gita chapter 15, the 5th verse, it is also stated, Nirmana Moha Jita Sangha Dosha, Adhyatma Nitya Vinilta Kama, Dvandigal Mukta Sudukta Samjit, Gachanti Amuta Padam Vyam Tat. Those who are freed from the dualities of the material world can attain the spiritual world. It is stated in the 5th verse of chapter 15. So that is how it is in the spiritual world. There are no dualities in the spiritual world. Everything is transcendental. Everything is pure goodness or Shuddha Sattva. That is why we have to transcend the three modes. Even we have to transcend even the mode of goodness, which is the mode of Sattva, to attain the mode of Shuddha Sattva, to attain the spiritual world. And these are the first two sutras in the Vedanta Sutra. Atato Brahma Jignasa is the first sutra, followed by Janmadi Asyayata. And we also know that Janmadi Asyayata is also there in the first verse of Bhagavatam, the first canto, first chapter, the first verse. So the Vedanta Sutra is the cream of all the Upanishads. Actually, the Upanishads are the cream of the all the Vedic knowledge, and the Vedanta Sutra is the cream of all the Upanishads, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the cream of the Vedanta Sutra. So when we study Srimad Bhagavatam, we are actually studying the cream of the cream of the cream. So that's why it's actually, if you look at the first sutra also, Atato Brahma Jignasa, meaning that at least now inquire about Brahman. Here, Brahman refers to the Param Brahma, the Supreme Brahman, that is Krishna. Though the living entities are also often considered to be Brahman, we are merely parts and parcels of the Supreme Brahman. It doesn't mean that we are equal to the Supreme Brahman, though that is what the impersonalists or monists say when they say that everything is one. Some people are too obsessed with this aphorism of Aham Brahmasmi. So there's always this misleading statements like I am God, you are God, everyone is God. So it's not like that. We are parts and parcels of the Supreme Brahman, the Param Brahma. Just like how a particle of gold is qualitatively equal to a gold mine. However, we cannot simply say that that minute particle of gold is equal to the gold mine. qualitatively they may be equal. However, quantitatively the gold mine is huge. That is how the individual Brahman, that is how the living entities are different from the supreme Brahman. So here Atato Brahma Jignasa means that we should, at least now we should inquire about the supreme Brahman. And for those who are engaged in Krishna consciousness, of course, we are doing it because we have had our Brahma Jignasa moment. We have experienced the need to inquire about the Supreme Brahman. So by following the instructions in the scriptures like Gita and Bhagavatam, we can understand the Supreme Absolute Truth and attain the Supreme Abode. So we have completed the chapter. This is the third and final part. We have completed chapter 3. There are two remaining chapters in this book. So maybe we'll also look into those chapters in the upcoming sessions. So thanks a lot for attending today's session. Any comments or questions? Hello.
No questions, Prabhu.
Okay, so thanks for attending, and so we'll meet in the next session, hopefully.